Welcome everybody to Moving IT Classes Online using TestOut. I'm joined with TJ Thoss, a teacher from Orlando Technical College in Florida. My name is Travis Wild, an account executive here at TestOut. We're going to be talking today about online programs and how to, and some of the challenges we face, some of the things that are rewarding with an online program. TJ, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your program, what you do, what you've been doing.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. So, as Travis said, I'm TJ Thoss. I teach at Orange Technical College here in Orlando, Florida. I teach ethical hacking, cybersecurity for the most part. Also teach a smart home program.
Awesome. That's it.
Yeah,
How long have you been teaching
that's
there
me.
at Orange Technical College?
February was 15 years.
15 years, and in
15
your
years.
and actually kind of there's quite a few institutions throughout the country that do this. You actually have both an adult, so a post-secondary segment, as well as a high school secondary segment that meets on your campus. Is that so? Tell us a little bit maybe about that dynamic and the type of students you're bringing into your programs.
Yeah, so students in Orange County Public Schools here, they have the opportunity starting their junior year of high school. They can spend half of their day and come onto our campus and go through one of our technical programs. So they can do that their junior year and their senior year of high school. And then if they want, once they graduate high school, they can keep coming back as a post-secondary adult student and finish up the program. So we have our high school students on campus, and then of course our traditional post-secondary adult students.
Awesome. And yeah, I see that model, more of a growing model is schools try to integrate the transition from a secondary into a post-secondary and then leading into community colleges and four-year institutions as well. Hey, I'm going to start out with a poll question for everybody. So it looks like we've got just under 100 people in here to the meeting today talking about this. And this will give you a chance to respond. So let's see, I'm going to launch this first question. It just says, what's been your experience with teaching an online program? So you should see that in your window there. And we'll give you a second to respond. A couple of responses that are options here for, I really recently started teaching online courses. I've integrated some aspects of the online, and I've been teaching online for a while. So let you all add your feedback in and get a kind of a view of what we're seeing with the different instructors that are on there. And this is kind of interesting. We've got about we got a few more coming in here, pushing ahead. So it's a pretty even split, about a third of each of those categories. So a third of you are saying that you've used some type of online course. A third have done kind of a blended learning, and then just under a third of you are saying that, hey, I've been doing online for a while. This is old stuff for me. So TJ, and actually you've kind of, we talked yesterday, you've kind of done it all, right? You traditional in classroom environment, a blended hybrid model, and then an online program as well.
Yeah, and just for me personally, for teaching a lot of the IT stuff, I have found really using a blended model works really well, right? So, obviously we have test out, that's completely online. So our students go through that, and then we supplement that with a lot of hands-on work. So, like I always tell students coming into the program, if they read about it, watch a video about it, do a simulation about it, hear me talk to them about it, then chances are they're going to actually get in there, physically do some sort of a hands-on assignment to do with that topic, to learn how to actually perform the work.
Right, and so you're taking, so in a normal everyday environment, you're using more of a blended model. You're bringing some components of the online, but then you're bringing them into the classroom. And I wish we were there in your lab, because it would make most all of these teachers jealous of the equipment and the setup that you have there. I'll just tell the other teachers that are on here, TJ got to pick the color scheme of his lab. That's how awesome his program is, and how much his directors think of what he's doing there. He's running a great program. They let him pick the color scheme. It's not
Purple and blue.
Purple and blue. So
Purple and blue.
I don't even know where that comes from. All right. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question that we're going to get into here. Just how would you describe your experience with online teaching? So just to get a little bit more feedback here, we're going to let this one run for a second. A couple options here. I love it. It's okay, slow going, but I'm getting the hang of it. I want my online campus or my on-campus classes back. I know my wife teaches high school English. She's missing her students and that engagement that comes from being on campus. And then I need time to properly create an online program. So I have some input here. We'll give it a few seconds here. So once again, how would you describe your experience here in an online situation? All right. Okay, let's just talk about some of the results here. Well, I'm going to give it one more second. All right, we'll close it out there. So the majority of you, over half of you, say you love it or it's okay. So we're doing all right there. 14% of you say it's slow going, but you're getting the hang of it. 19% want your campuses back. You're missing that classroom experience. And then 16% say that you need time to properly create an online program. So let's start there, TJ. I was reading an article the other day talking about what we're currently facing. So this, and the point of the article, and maybe some of you read it, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at WildTravis on Twitter. I tweeted out this article, but it was talking about how what a lot of schools are facing right now is this is not online learning. This is triage learning. If we had online learning, you'd have time to prepare for it. You'd have some professional development. You'd have the resources in place already. But right now, we're seeing so many schools forced into this online environment just to keep learning going. Thoughts on that and what we're seeing now?
Well, that's the challenge. I've always been a big fan of online learning. That's why I love TestOut. Um, so but yeah, normally though you would be able to prep and prepare and put everything together and have a plan, have a plan for reaching out to students and all that. But
Right.
like you said, now all of a sudden now it's just, hey, you're online, have fun. Um, and so for a lot of us, it's a huge shift right now to really start trying to implement this, and it can be tough for sure.
Right. Especially just being thrown into the fire. Hey, let's go. Let's have them up and running here in a week. I mean, I'm now I deal with high schools, and I think that's a little bit different environment than a post-secondary. A post-secondary, I think we're seeing a different scenario. Maybe having a device, but you were telling me about a student in your post-secondary school who relied upon a family computer, and they've only got one computer to share amongst the
Yeah,
siblings. You still living at home, right?
yeah. So I mean, even though our students are post-secondary, a lot of my students are, 18 to 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still living at home. They're just trying to, get the training, get out there and start working. So, like you said, one of my students, his younger brother is in middle school, I want to say. So he's on the computer most of the day doing his assignments, working with his teachers and everything. So, so my guy is struggling, trying to find that time to get online and do his assignment. So you have to really work with each student on an individual basis, especially right now. Um,
Right.
and make those adjustments and concessions for each of them.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up just my first slide here. Give us some of the topics here. Let's see if I can figure out how to use a PowerPoint slide. That's a big thing. I'm not a big PowerPoint person, but hey, this will bring us some of the topics. You and I were talking yesterday about some of these things that are helping as we excuse me, we're planning for this discussion, and some of the things that you've seen that have worked in your classroom setting. And let me point out once again, the goal is to adapt to your particular environment. Now, everybody's being forced into an online environment, so that's what we're all talking about right now. But hopefully, some of these concepts we're going to share today and talk about today, you're going to be able to take back, and maybe in the fall, life becomes a little bit more normal, and maybe you move to a more blended model for a teacher. There is a downloadable document that you can share within the GoToWebinar interface that outlines kind of the traditional, the blended, we call it a hybrid, and then a completely online program. And we put this together probably a year or two ago, probably about a year ago. Just some tips and tricks as far as looking at some of these different scenarios. But let's start with student engagement. That's the biggest one that I'm talking with teachers about right now. You were telling me yesterday just what you're doing with your own kids. I think it's fabulous. I've been reading a lot of articles about some of these best case scenarios, and I think keeping that schedule and routine consistent. So tell me what you're doing with your own kids, but what you're finding with your students, not just your biologicals, but you're also your non-biological kids. Your students are. But what type of routine and schedule are you keeping with them?
Well, I mean, just on a personal level, like you said, you know, we didn't change our schedule. I'm still getting up at 5:30 every morning, getting up, drinking coffee, getting ready to go to work, getting the kids up. They eat their breakfast. They're getting ready to go to school. But instead of driving everywhere, we're just walking to our respective rooms to hop online and do our work. You know, so but having that schedule every single day is key. So I've kind of done the same thing moving into the online. Um, a lot of our students right now, especially with the post-secondary students, they're picking up extra hours at work, or they have a lot of other stuff going on. So I can't realistically expect my students to get online and be on the same schedule that we were when they were in class. It's just
Right.
not going to happen. But we have daily assignments that they need to get on. Whether it's a discussion post, submit screenshots of your work, whatever the case is. And just being being very direct and explicit. And this is what I expect from you today. This is when it's due. Get it done. Upload your work, your proof, whatever.
Right.
And
I'm finding that too. So when I'm talking to teachers, I'm telling them, hey, you've got to set the expectation of I'm still the teacher, you're still the student, and even though we're not interacting how we have in the past, here's the expectation of what's due, here's the assignments, and really communicating that out is key. Let's talk set realistic expectation, because that's a large one. I'm hearing that from district people as well as just teachers in general, right? I mean, as you mentioned, maybe a student's having to pick up extra hours. Maybe they've lost their job too, and the
yeah,
scenario has changed there. I mean, that's a definite reality too. So, setting that realistic expectations. What's kind of been your thought there as far as, and let's maybe step away from the pandemic side, but more just a traditional, hey, I'm running here's what I expect my students to do, and the time and the effort. Because hopefully we move beyond a pandemic. So I don't want to
right.
focus just entirely on the unique situation we're in here.
Well, when you're doing a lot of online work, in the traditional model, your students are with you X number of hours a day. You're face to face. You don't have that online. So uh, you really just need to set a timeline for work to be done. So I may have, by Friday at midnight, you need to have X number of assignments turned in, complete this section and test out, uh, you know, write this research paper, whatever the case is. Uh, so I'm not as worried about them turning that work in, 5 o'clock on Monday and 5 o'clock on Tuesday or whatever. Because a lot of the kids I've noticed, they're logging in at 1 o'clock in the morning because that's when they're up right now,
Right.
and they're getting the work done. So that's the nice part about the online is you set those expectations and you set those assignments and you say, it's got to be there by Friday. That's your due date, and that's all you're really worried about. So you just set that expectation for a weekly or uh, you know a set of time, not a daily. But you
Right.
also want to have something small for that daily engagement.
Yeah, hey, we're going to get to the daily. I just want to point out, and I should have brought it up and you should be able to see this in the screen. This was a tool that we created recently, probably within the last 6 months. So I'm not even sure a lot of TestOut users are aware that it's available for them. But if you want to go to the teaching aids within each product, now I brought up in this case an Excel, sorry, Office Pro um, product. And so what it is a course schedule creator. What it's going to do is create a pacing guide for you. And so like you're saying set realistic expectations. So I've been on the phone a lot with teachers looking at our Office product and some with our IT product. But what it's going to allow me to do is let's say a teacher is working through Excel over the next let's call it the next 6 weeks. We're going to get through the end of the year, and what it will do is automatically create a pacing guide. Here's the expectation if you want to get to this certain point of what needs to be covered. So between this and the lesson plans that are already created within TestOut, I think it's a good tool to be able to share with students. And I pointed out a lot of your students might be on a self-paced model, and I think that's how a lot of your students are, right? Are they
Well,
on the
and I
self-paced model, or you kind of keep them in different start times?
no. So most of our students are all self-paced. At least the adult students are.
Mhm.
And I was just looking at that. So that's a great example. And I was just actually talking with another one of my co-teachers this morning. So our students are scheduled to be with us typically 15 hours a week in class for a part-time student, 30 hours a week for a full-time student. So our expectation is basically you're still going to turn in either 15 hours worth of work or 30 hours worth of work. Um,
Right.
so it's my job though to find out what that work is, right? And what you just had up there, so that chapter you had was 800 minutes, I believe. So that's what, about 12 hours or so.
Yeah. Let me bring it back in here. So we have 80 minutes here. Well, yeah, total 802 minutes for the total section in Excel.
See, so now a student might actually be able to get through that in 5 hours, 6 hours, whatever, but it's 12 hours worth of work. So the students, and that's one of the nice things about online learning and self-paced is the students, if they can get through it, then they can get through it quicker. They may not need to spend 30 hours,
Right.
but
Right.
some might need to. So,
Absolutely.
but again, yeah, that's that expectation though.
Right. By the way, if any of the anybody who's on the session here, if you would like to ask questions, we're going to circle back around at the end, and feel free to ask those to either TJ or myself. We've got a bunch of people from TestOut as well, kind of in the background that can help answer questions. But if you have any questions or even comments you want to share, please do so. So let's talk a little bit about daily tasks. I think that was key for you. And once again, student engagement, so they know the teacher's there and that I'm still fulfilling my role as a student. So
Well, so daily tasks. So we use Canvas as our uh, LMS in our district. So it's kind of easy for me. I just go in and have a daily discussion posting. So students go in there, and it could be something, just kind of fun. Just like, hey, what movies are you binge watching, or TV shows are you binge watching right now? Or have
right,
them go do a little bit of research and post that up. Uh, Nothing super crazy or super involved or big, but just something where I know and I have proof that they're logging in every single day and participating in something. And that I I I feel that by them logging in every day, that's going to help kind of get them into that mindset of, okay, it's school time, I got to do some work.
once again, it's circling back into that routine, right? So we're going to say,
Right.
hey, here's my expectation. Here's what needs to be done every day. I'm still in a student, and I think that's the biggest challenge is, well, especially right now, is school's still happening. And once again, I'm dealing with a little bit different conversation on the high school level, where a lot of high school students aren't familiar with an online education program. But I'll tell you what, they better be because it's coming their way when they move into that post-secondary environment. And I
Yeah.
keep telling people this has just moved online education forward about 5 years, and we're going to see more and more online education. I'd love any feedback on and any teachers in there just on what you're if you had a crystal ball and could say, hey, what's this pandemic and this online forced online education model done to speed things up? So feel free to put that in the comment box there. We did have a question come through that I'll just stop and answer this right now, because this has to do with a little bit of student engagement. A student who's on asked if we have ever thought about doing a mobile app for iPad. Now, I will say, technically, your iPad should be able to run videos and text lessons. I'm not going to always suggest that's the best scenario to do it, but one thing that this, once again, these types of I don't know what disruptions in what we normally do allows us to look in a little bit differently and put a different perspective on different scenarios. And I've already reached out to the development team and said, hey, we need to have a mobile app. If it did nothing else, ran our videos and text lessons to help those students who are struggling to getting on actual computers. So yeah, we're definitely looking at something like that. That's been something that's been brought up. So. Let's talk about engagement guidelines and boundaries. So this was something I hadn't even picked up on. I haven't been having conversations about, but certainly it's been in the news with Zoom and some of the travesty that's been going on as far as people hacking into Zoom meetings, inappropriate content. So maybe just say a few thoughts about setting engagement guidelines there and what you're seeing and one of your fellow teachers. You can maybe share that story.
Yeah. So, especially with our high school students, I am not comfortable getting on camera with a high school student, or at least having them on camera. Now, depending on whatever application you're using to have your video conference with, whether it's Zoom, Skype, Big Blue Button is what our county uses. Um, I would just always make sure that hopefully you can record it. And you as the presenter, you should always have the option to disable webcams. Um,
Right.
I would never let a high school student have their webcam on while I'm talking with them. Really, any student, post-secondary or secondary, but definitely secondary students. I would just hate for something to happen. Uh,
Right.
and like you said, it's in the news with Zoom. Uh, you know, teachers, people starting up web conferences, and they're not understanding how to properly secure those. So they're wide open. They're posting the passwords or whatever in a public forum, so anybody can now come in, log in, and disrupt your meeting. So
Yeah,
just always
it's
keep
definitely
that
something
stuff
to
in
worry,
mind.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
and I'm just going to throw in just a little here, data privacy too. I mean, this is huge right now.
Hmm.
Please make sure we're securing students' privacy. Please make sure we're protecting students' data. This is just because we're online. I think we actually should be more vigilant in trying to protect students' data and privacy and in some of those matters there. So that's
Yeah,
huge.
absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about since this is a test out webinar, let's talk about the test out environment and how you're using it, and how that's been used in for your. You're saying you're a hybrid model, and as I touted, you have an amazing lab, so you have some actual equipment that you can work on. But tell me a little bit about how you're using test out in your online learning and how that's benefited you, especially right now.
Well, I mean, this is the situation that TestOut is built for, right? Is online learning.
Yeah.
I mean, in TestOut, you've got your reading. So I have students that left for spring break, and then we went on lockdown over our county spring break. So all of their textbooks are still in the classroom because they didn't take them home. Um, but they don't need them as much right now. They've still got TestOut, which has your reading assignments. It's got your video lessons, and then of course the uh, simulations that the students can go through. So, normally in our program, we have the test out and then me lecturing and talking with the students and working with them individually. And then, of course, like I said, all of the hands on labs that they're going to do. So, really, with this whole situation right now, we're just losing that hands on portion, which is a big piece. But at the very least, the students can still get all the theory and still practice in the labs and environment, which is still just an incredible feature and something that they're able to do and still learn.
Right. And a lot of programs, even in a traditional setting, might not have the access to the equipment. I mean, you've got your own dedicated network. I mean, it's a pretty
I'm
sweet lab,
lucky. Right.
and yeah, you are very fortunate. I mean, I can't, I was kind of blown away when you were like, "Hey, Travis, come check out my new lab," and I was just shocked. I mean, not every school has that equipment. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a post-secondary or secondary environment. Having all the equipment that we're able to simulate, and the resources that TestOut is able to do in a simulated environment is a huge benefit right now.
Right.
So let's let's talk reporting features too, because that was a big one you brought up yesterday. And so tell me a little. You can tell the group here how you're using reporting features within TestOut. And I'm going to bring my student account in here, and we'll talk about this. But tell me how you're using reporting features to track student engagement.
Well, so typically, I always just use the grade book, make sure the students went in, look at their grades, make sure that they were passing and doing the work, and that was it. Because I was with them, so I could see that they were online. I could see that they were doing their work because I could physically monitor them.
Right.
Unfortunately, now I can't, right?
Right.
So it's actually kind of funny. I got an email from a student last Friday. Yes, I sent out an email to some of mine that weren't really turning in a lot of work. And so I sent him an email and said, "Hey, I noticed you're not doing much work." And he wrote me back and said, "Well, everything going on. I've been working on my test out assignments, but I just, been super busy." So I went in and that report right there, product usage. So I
Right.
pulled that. So I ran that report,
Yeah, let's just run
and
it here. But I apologize. I've only got one student in here that's actually done in my class here, but I didn't want to
well,
use
that's okay.
any real data. I wanted to
So
protect the students' identities.
So the cool thing here is up there at the top, the date range.
Right.
So I selected the date range for this month. So you see it came up immediately April 1st.
Yeah.
And I ran that, and I could see that since April 1st through the 7th, so 1 week, the student has spent a grand total of 15 minutes
Hmm.
uh, on TestOut doing work. So I screenshot that, sent it over to him, and I said, "Well, I think in a week's worth of time, you should be able to do more than 15 minutes worth of work."
Right.
Um, Now, the next day I went and checked, and he's got 3 hours worth of work done. So uh, there's a lot of awesome reports in here that are going to help you to monitor your student and to see what they're doing. Um,
Right.
so again, then that kind of goes back to that daily engagement. Uh, but this at least lets you see what they're doing. Are they doing any work? And then if you notice that they're not, you can get in there and reach out to the students and find out what's going on.
Right. And so you mentioned even your administration's getting involved right now with students that aren't showing progress or work. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. It's a team effort right now. So when you have those students and, you can pull this report and you can see, hey, you haven't logged in a week. Uh, you can send their information over to our deans, over to our administrators, and they'll follow up with those students also and try to find out what's going on, what can we do to help.
right.
Yeah, so it's a whole team effort here
Yeah, but
at,
this
at
and,
OTC.
and honestly, TJ, when I demo our product, I don't know that I've ever shown anybody this particular report, but what an awesome report to
Yeah,
actually narrow down a date range. Here's where the student's using it or not using it, and when they've logged in, and how much they're doing. In my wife, in her particular school, the counselors are actually been asked to reach out to teachers. She's at a high school, and so the counselors have been charged with, hey, reach out to these students, pardon me, who haven't logged in, who haven't done anything, and so make sure that they are getting into the system. Make sure that, and I keep saying, learning must keep going, right? This is the period, once again, we're talking pandemic time versus a normal time, but right now, making sure learning is happening. We had a teacher ask a question, saying that they teach the high school PC Pro, Network Pro, and Security Pro, and the biggest struggle is the students are the teacher's unable to require a grade for assignments. So students are saying that, hey, why bother, right? I don't know how you overcome that. I think the biggest thing would be keeping the students engaged with, hey, this isn't just for today. We're trying to train you for careers, and here's some of the paths that we can, and bring the discussion. So even if, and maybe you step away from the test out for a minute, and you focus on careers and pathways and talk money. Kids love talking about the money they could potentially be making in IT, and maybe that's maybe where you circle the wagons back around and say, hey, maybe we're going to step away from test out for a minute, and assignments, and let's talk about career paths and what do you want to do with your life, and just have some of these conversations, because right now is a good time to be talking about what are you going to do with your life. Everybody's world's been disrupted right now, and so we're all kind of wondering, what am I doing with my life? So, all right, let's continue on here. Couple more topics. And once again, if you have any questions, I appreciate whoever that high school teacher was putting that in. That is a big challenge. And different states have different requirements right now as far as what teachers can grade. And they're still being debated whether they're going to move to a pass or fail model. And it's all over the place. I'm glad I'm not making those decisions, because it's huge right now. I mean, we're affecting students' GPAs if we just give them a pass fail model, and their scholarships, and everybody's world's turned upside down right now. Let's talk a little bit about your learning management system. So you are fortunate, you are running Canvas, and I just maybe tell everybody a little bit how you're using Canvas, because you're actually not fully integrated with the TestOut. You're actually, students are still logging in normally through TestOut, but tell everybody how you're using TestOut as a tool to help facilitate online learning.
Well, like I said earlier, TestOut is a part of our program. It's not the entire curriculum. Right now, during this, it's become a bigger part than what it was before. So we use Canvas. So the students need to log into Canvas every day. Like I said, I have a discussion board assignment that they need to get on and do some sort of a daily participation. And then all of their assignments are just listed out in there. So, and really, Travis, it doesn't matter if you're using Canvas, Google Classroom, Moodle, any of the other LMSs that are out there. You should be able to set those up. The nice thing about those is most of those you should be able to go into and see when the student logged in, so you can check that also for login. And most of them, if not all of them, have some sort of a discussion board that you should be able to set up on there. And then, so they go on there, they get their assignments, and then, as I said, a piece that is test out. So depending on what section they're in, they'll go and do those test out assignments, whatever other online resources I've been able to find for them.
Right. And that to me has been huge. I mean, because once again, we're talking, the biggest challenge right now, student engagement. I keep hearing that over and over again, these discussion boards within some of these LMSs. And like you said, it doesn't have to be Canvas. It can be Google Class, it could be Moodle. It could just be, my daughter's got a teacher who's been teaching for 20 years, and he has a website and he has his way of doing things. That's okay, right? It's just, let's keep that that engagement between students and teacher continuing on. Let's see. Yeah, I just had a post-secondary teacher said we're expected to contact the students using whatever contact methods we can to reach out to them. So let's talk about some of those. You and I were talking about like the Remind app, right? And you're using that? I don't remember if you told me you're using Remind.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been using Remind for a couple of years now. Uh, most of our kids are used to their text messaging, so Remind is a great app that I can, the students sign up, or I can sign them up into a class or into a group on Remind. I can send out individual messages. I can send out an announcement to the entire class, particular students, whatever, and then they can reply back to me, and it comes up on my phone as a text message. They get they get my messages back as a text message. And the nice thing is that it does not use my phone number.
Right.
Um,
Once again,
so
setting those boundaries, setting those
right,
expectations.
yeah. So they can communicate with me and they can text with me and everything, but it's a barrier between me and them. My personal information and them. Um, so Remind is a great way to communicate with students. Email, of course,
Yeah.
your LMS.
And Remind's not the only app out there. There's several
No,
other
no,
ones
no.
that are doing it. Reminds to me, I keep seeing that one pop up in educator communities that they're using that as a resource. So that's a good one. Um, any of these collaboration tools as well. Yeah, let's bring this back up, and I have it on my slide here of find out what tools are approved, right? So there within
Yeah,
your district in Orange County Public Schools, uh, you guys aren't allowed to use Zoom, is that correct? You have a different resource to use?
yeah, and this was something that we were talking about yesterday, and this goes back to that question there. Um, well, I'll say our county, we have a specific list of software programs that we're allowed to use, especially if a student has to input any personal information to create an account or anything like that. That software has to go through a vetting process with our IT department to be approved.
Right.
So yeah, so with all the stuff about Zoom came out last week and everything, we got word that we can't use Zoom to have meetings with our students or anything. So our county has a program, the Big Blue Button is what it's called.
Mhm.
Uh, so we have to have our online meetings with our students using that program.
Right.
So yeah, don't just go and, oh, this is a really cool resource and let me start
Right.
using this with my students.
Yeah.
And now you find out that whatever program it is, it's not secure. It's capturing students' information, especially if they're high school
Selling it
students.
to a
Uh,
third party.
yeah,
Yeah. We're setting everybody up for some liability there. Um,
yeah. So
so
be
yeah, the
careful.
suggestion there, right, is we're moving into these online spaces. Figure out what your district and there's somebody at the district that specifically knows and understands, and there's a reason why some of these applications aren't allowed. I went through a 6 month vetting process with a district in the state that should be renamed or not named Georgia, that they spent 6 months trying to figure out, and this was in a normal environment, but making sure that our data privacy policies were up to their standards and the legalities there. So please, as a teacher, as you move into an online environment, understand what the resources your district has approved. And if there's other resources you want to bring in, figure out who that person is that can give you the go ahead, and before you just go sign. And hey, TestOut's been doing it too, but there's a lot of resources out there offering free resources right now, and so it's easy to just get pulled into that. Now, if it's TestOut, we're okay, but just be aware of what's going on there. So let's talk about other resources, though, because one thing you're seeing, and you brought this up to me yesterday, is learn about other resources that are out there. So yeah, what are you seeing? Is your inbox full of opportunities to take advantage of some things?
Yeah, actually it is. So a lot of your companies out there, they're providing a lot of online training right now for free, or at this very least a severely reduced price. So it's a lot of industry training that is open and available now. So webinars like this that you can give the information out to the students, let them go and sign up for it, and get some extra training in there. And you can use that as an assignment. Make them go and sit in on the webinar or watch the recording and right if you reported something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, just reach out to your industry partners. Find out. Uh, you know, you may not be aware of an organization, but your industry partners are.
Right.
So that was, so when
Like
we
with
first,
your home, yeah, your home security or CDA people that, they're able to say, hey, here's a resource. And
yeah,
you were telling me that you were actually bringing some of your home security automation folks that had some recorded sessions or something that now you're using those as what would you call these guest lecturers and having your students watch some of these.
yeah, yeah. So CEDIA, which is the organization really for the entire smart home industry, they starting next week, they're doing 2 webinars a week that are open. So I sent those out to my smart home technician students and told them they need to sign up for at least one of these, but really all of them is what they should do. Um, and go to these webinars. They're usually about 1 hour, and it's like having a guest lecturer in the classroom, except
Right.
online.
Yeah.
So it's
Every student
a,
write a summary of what they learned, right? And understand that engagement there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's a great opportunity for guest lectures. If you put it that way, they might be more inclined to go and sign up for them.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to run one more poll question, and we're going to finish up here in just a second. So this question, what's been your biggest struggle? Keeping students motivated, teaching the curriculum, communicating with students, not having equipment. That's luckily for you, you're running TestOut, so that gives you a way to overcome that problem. And then just technology, right? The biggest challenge that I'm talking with high schools is having students have proper um, technology. So let me go ahead and hit launch on that. You'll see the poll question pop up in your environment. So let's give you a few minutes here. I'll just tell you, man, I've been having conversations all over the place, but having students, technology, and student, we're seeing Chromebook carts stripped down from schools, uh, Chromebooks checked out, which is good because then they have a resource there. But then um, internet access, that's a big one. So we're seeing some districts actually purchasing prepaid hotspots and sending those home with students. I'll tell you what, rural environments, that's a challenge right now. Um, I was talking to a teacher in rural Indiana a couple days ago, and she says, even where I'm at, I'm so far out of town that just there's no way unless I'm on a satellite connection to get internet access. So, I mean, these rural environments do exist. Okay, okay, I'm gonna hit close. By far, let's see, 56%. Keeping students motivated, right? And so that's going back some of these tips and tricks you're talking about, TJ. Keeping them daily tasks, monitoring their progress, bringing in a guest lecture. These are the things that we're trying to keep the kids engaged with. Motivation is a whole nother issue right now, and I think we have to take a little bit of a back step and say, hey, there's a lot of psychological things going on right now, and a lot of circumstances we don't understand. School motivation might be just a challenge for right now. But moving forward in an online environment, I think that there's definitely things that can be done to motivate and encourage students moving forward. Communicating with students, 25%. That's a huge issue right now. Once again, bringing my wife back up, she has a couple of students she hasn't been able to get hold of. Have you seen that too, or there any students you haven't been able to get contact with, or has that been a challenge?
Uh, at first it was, but I have since though been able to get a hold of each one of my students.
Okay,
And so thankfully that's not an issue for me.
right. Yeah, that's a challenge there. And then bringing in 10% of the respondents here, technology is just having the students have the technology to move into an online environment. So once again, that's a little bit different scenario if we're planning out or we're preparing. Hey, this fall I'm going to be teaching an online class. Definitely we can help that out. I do want to bring up, and I apologize, I don't have it in this slide here. We do have a Facebook, as we dissed Facebook earlier in the comments, but we do TestOut has created a Facebook instructor community. If you want to just go on to Facebook and connect with us there, just search for TestOut Instructor Community. I think that's what it's called. Somebody else on the TestOut side can let me know if I've got that wrong. But right now, there's about 100 teachers. We're going to continue some of these conversations online in that Facebook community. So I know TJ won't be on there because he just admitted he deleted Facebook. Oh, and by the way, stay away from all those phishing scams where they ask you your top favorite things. Those are social engineering exploits, people. They're really trying to collect data against you. So just be aware of that. But go to the Facebook instructor page because we're going to continue on. It's called the TestOut Instructor Community, and you can go and take a look at some of the discussions. One of them I brought up the other day, not that we're going to get into it, is just the equity in education. I mean, that's just what one of the biggest challenges is. We're trying to keep learning going, but making it learning for everyone, so everybody's still having to look for that Facebook community to jump on there. Follow us on Twitter at TestOut Corp. You want to follow me? I like to post some of these things and some of these conversations at Wild Travis. So TJ, you got a Twitter handle?
No, sorry.
No. Yeah, smart man. It's a rabbit's hole. Let's move on. Just to real quick to see if we got any Q&A that we can move on with. Move my slide. Sorry, I got multiple screens here trying to figure out where my mouse is. And so let's see if we can move on to our questions here. So any questions for TJ, or myself, feel free to ask them now. Kind of run a little bit longer than I would have anticipated, but hopefully it's been engaging for some of the teachers that are looking for some of the things. Let's see. I think maybe we are good. Any questions out there, Aubrey? Aubrey's watching things for me. Nope. Okay. Hey, TJ, thanks for the time today. Appreciate it. We're going to send this out as a recording to those who made it or didn't make it. So appreciate the time. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll just keep education going and learning going. Thanks, man.
Sounds good.
All
Thanks,
right.
Travis.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.